Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 2018 Mercedes-AMG 4-door Coupé. So this is a car that was put in production in 2018 and is essentially a 5-door variant of the AMG GT 2-door sports car. And yeah, this is the top of the line version, the GT63S. And yeah, it features a all-wheel drive system which is rear biased. It also utilises the rear anti-roll bar to increase chassis stiffness and an active aero system from the AMG GTR. And yeah, it's got plenty of things to like about it, especially in comparison to another 4-door saloon car in the form of the Porsche Panamera. It certainly looks better than that Porsche, and it's got just as much in the way of practicality, because obviously being a 4-door saloon, it's got plenty of space in the front, a decent amount of space in the back, though only 4 seats as far as I can see, because it looks like it has some kind of tray or something in the middle there. And yeah, it's also got a hatchback rear, so yeah, plenty of boot space there, though I think the Porsche Panamera has slightly more room in the rear, and yeah, slightly more room in the back for passengers as well. But as per usual with modern AMG Mercedes, there's plenty of you know, decent interior space and quality here. All nice and shiny with all the usual buttons and the like, though there seems to be a fair old amount of buttons on the steering wheel there, which I'm not particularly fond of, especially that volume knob, which looks a bit cheap. But outside of that, everything else looks fairly solid. And yeah, continuing with that theme of quality is what's under the bonnet, which is a really rather formidable engine. In actual fact, a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 engine that produces 630 horsepower and 663 pounds-feet of torque, which is a huge amount of power. That's, you know, more than 50 horsepower more than the AMG GTR, which, you know, was the most powerful version of that GT car. And yeah, you're talking 127 horsepower more than the GTS version. So yeah, a massive amount of power and an incredible amount of torque as well. But then again, this car does need it, as it weighs 4,508 pounds, which is actually even more so than the Porsche Panamera by 110 pounds. Now, granted, that Panamera, I don't like the look of it. It doesn't have as good a sounding V8 engine as this, and yeah, the practicality is pretty negligible between the two, to be honest. But the power and the torque on this does certainly give it a massive advantage over the Panamera. But one area that this car doesn't have over the Panamera is in terms of handling and braking, because that car not only has slightly less weight, but it's a bit more focused in terms of handling, and yeah, this doesn't quite have the agility of that Panamera, and yeah, also has a fair bit of understeer, despite the fact that that all-wheel drive system is rear biased. But nonetheless, let's get out onto the open road and just see what this car can do. Now, even though this is the most powerful version and the top of the line version of this GT 4-door saloon, or 4-door Coupé as they're calling it, there is a more powerful version coming out eventually that's going to use the same kind of engine, but also you know, couple it to a hybrid system, so it will be even more powerful. But to be honest, I'm not even a fan of this version as far as I'm concerned. It's trying to be far too many things in one go. It's trying to be a coupe, it's trying to be a 4-door saloon, it's trying to be a sports saloon, it's trying to be a sporty kind of car, and the fact that it's got all-wheel drive and weirdly quite a high ground clearance, it seems to also be trying to tap into the you know, the sports utility market as well in some regards. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is a little bit too much of a mix of too many things, and as a result, it's not particularly excellent in any singular area, because the handling is not all that great. It has a fair old amount of understeer. You can certainly feel that the front end is really rather heavy. The weight itself in general of the car is all over the place. You can tell the car's kind of struggling to keep it into line. There's weirdly quite a fair bit of body roll as well, which is a surprise from a modern AMG. And yeah, at the end of the day, it is just a 4-door version of an already great sports car in the form of either the GTS or the GTR. Take your pick over which one, but either one is better than this, even though they are both less powerful than this and slower in terms of 0 to 60 time, as well as top speed. Speaking of both of them, 0 to 60 time of 3.1 seconds, 0 to 107.6 seconds, and it goes to top speed of 218 miles an hour, which is mightily impressive, especially from a car that is this big and this heavy. But it's certainly far more impressive in terms of straight line performance than it is in terms of actually handling, because like I outlined before, it just doesn't feel as sharp or as agile as the likes of the Panamera. And obviously it's not the only four-door all-wheel drive saloon car apart from the Panamera. You've also got the M5, which again feels better to drive than this does. And you've got other Mercedes as well out there that also have all-wheel drive that are also better handling and feel a lot sharper than this. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to how big and how weighty it is. So it is a bit of a shame, because this engine is a really, really good engine. Sounds great, hugely powerful, got loads of torque, and it's relentless in terms of acceleration. Even well past 100 mile an hour, you're continually increasing in speed by a really rather startling rate. But I'd much rather have this engine in the GTR or the GTS, because both of those cars are substantially lighter than this by around £1,000, and also, being smaller and rear wheel drive only, are a lot more responsive to your inputs, a lot more fun to drive, because they don't have that weight and they are only rear wheel drive. And being focused as only a sports car means that they just feel a lot more focused, a lot less compromises involved in those vehicles, and just doesn't quite, they don't have the negative aspects of this car, while also obviously not being as practical. They focus as being a sports car, not trying to be a practical four-door coupe saloon that is also sporty at the same time. So I do respect this car hugely in terms of the engine, because that engine is glorious, especially nowadays where engines these days seem to either getting smaller or trying to be more efficient. And the fact that they've come out with a car that is this powerful is really rather good. But it's not the only four-door saloon out there with a lot of power. I mean, even the likes of a Cadillac with their CTS-V has as much power, if not more, than this, and that is even better in terms of handling and looks as well. So it's certainly not alone in the four-door saloon crowd, and because of that, and because it isn't that great in terms of handling or braking or in general in terms of fun, it's just not quite up there as much as previous Mercedes sports cars have been, and certainly not in terms of other cars from other manufacturers. But I am glad it's in the game, because it is another new car in the game, and I've got no problem with variety at all. It just so happens that I'm not personally a fan of it. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.